Hi, seniors. Today we are going to be going over Chapter 10 of Lord of the Flies. But before we do that, I want to quickly review the events of Chapter 9 because they're important to this chapter. So at the beginning of Chapter 9, Simon wakes up from his hallucination of the pig's head, the Lord of the Flies, and starts walking through the woods. But he stumbles upon, excuse me, I just had an allergy attack. He stumbles upon the dead parachuter, and he realizes that the parachuter is what everybody has mistaken for the beast. So he untangles the dead parachuter, and then he goes to find the other boys. Meanwhile, Peggy and Ralph decide that they want some of the meat from Jack's hunt, so they go meet up with everybody else who's already at the feast. It's a little awkward at first. They try to kind of break the ice, and they have a bit of an argument, but it breaks up when the thunder and lightning from the storm start happening. So the boys begin their dance, and everybody, including Ralph and Piggy, kind of get into the excitement as the thunder's going. They're dancing around the fire. First they start dancing around Little One, but then Simon comes out of the woods. Remember, it's dark. It's raining. They're already hyped up. They start surrounding him. He's trying to yell to them and explain to them that the parachuter is the beast, but instead they end up tearing him apart with their hands and their teeth, and until he's dead. His body falls off the cliff and is taken out into the water. Meanwhile, the parachuter that he untangled, the wind catches the parachute and catches the parachuter as he kind of descends down the mountain out of sight. But the boys see this and they freak out and they run screaming into the woods. So that was the end of Chapter 9. Let's begin with Chapter 10. On the first questions that we will be answering are: number 1, explain Ralph and Piggy's reaction to the previous night. And 2, what do Sam and Eric claim happened to them after the feast? What are Ralph and Piggy's excuses? All right. Chapter 10, the shell and the glasses. Piggy eyed the advancing figure carefully. Nowadays, he sometimes found that he saw more clearly if he removed his glasses and shifted the one lens to the other eye. But even through the good eye, after what had happened, Ralph remained unmistakably Ralph. He came now out of the coconut trees, limping, dirty, with dead leaves hanging from his shock of yellow hair. One eye was a slit in his puffy cheek, and a great scab had formed on his right knee. He paused for a moment and peered at the figure on the platform. Piggy, are you the only one left? There's some little ones. They don't count. No big uns? Oh, Sam and Eric. They're collecting wood. Nobody else? Not that I know of. Ralph climbed onto the platform carefully. The coarse grass was still worn away where the assembly used to sit. The fragile white conch still gleamed by the polished seat. Ralph sat down on the grass facing the chief's seat and the conch. Piggy knelt at his left, and for a long minute there was silence. At last Ralph cleared his throat and whispered something. Piggy whispered back. What'd you say? Ralph spoke up. Simon. Piggy said nothing but nodded, solemnly. They continued to sit, gazing with impaired sight at the chief's seat and the glittering lagoon. The green light and the glossy patches of sunshine played over their befouled bodies. At length Ralph got up and went to the conch. He took the shell caressingly with both hands and knelt, leaning against the trunk. Piggy, what are we going to do? Piggy nodded at the conch. You could call an assembly? Ralph laughed sharply as he said the word, and Piggy frowned. You're still chief. Ralph laughed again. You are, over us. I got the conch. Ralph, stop laughing like that. Look, there ain't no need, Ralph. What's the others gonna think? At last Ralph stopped. He was shivering. Piggy. Huh? That was Simon. You said that before. Piggy. Huh? That was murder. You stop it, said Piggy shrilly. What good are you doing talking like that? He jumped to his feet and stood over Ralph. It was dark. There was that bloody dance. There was lightning and thunder and rain. We was scared. I wasn't scared, said Ralph slowly. I don't know what I was. We were scared, said Piggy excitedly. Anything might have happened. It wasn't what you said. He was gesticulating, searching for a formula. Oh, Piggy! Ralph's voice, low and stricken, stopped Piggy's gestures. He bent down and waited. Ralph, cradling the conch, rocked himself to and fro. Don't you understand, Piggy? The things we did. He may still be. No. Perhaps he was only pretending. Piggy's voice trailed off at the sight of Ralph's face. You were outside the circle. You never really came in. Didn't you see what they did? There was loathing, and at the same time a kind of feverish excitement in his voice. Didn't you see, Piggy? Not that well. I only got one eye now. You ought to know that, Ralph. Ralph continued to rock to and fro. It was an accident, said Piggy suddenly. That's what it was, an accident. His voice shrilled again. Coming in the dark. He hadn't no business crawling like that out of the dark. He was batty. He asked for it. He gesticulated widely again. It was an accident. You didn't see what they did. Look, Ralph, we got to forget this. We can't do no good thinking about it. See? I'm frightened. Of us. I want to go home. Oh, God, I want to go home. It was an accident, said Piggy stubbornly. And that's that. He touched Ralph's bare shoulders, and Ralph shuddered at the human contact. And look, Ralph. Piggy glanced round quickly, then leaned close. Don't let on we was in the dance, not to Sam and Eric. But we were, all of us. Piggy shook his head. Not us till last. They never noticed in the dark. Anyway, you said I was only on the outside. So was I, muttered Ralph. I was on the outside, too. Piggy nodded eagerly. That's right. We was on the outside. We never done nothing. We never seen nothing. Piggy paused, then went on. We'll live on our own, the four of us. 4 of us? We aren't enough to keep the fire burning. We'll try, see? I lit it. All right, so you can answer Ralph and Piggy's reaction to the previous night, especially, go on the fact that, one of them kind of says, oh, it was an accident, kind of tries to make excuses. I wasn't really part of it, but, what does the other one do? Right off the bat, it knows it's been wrong. He admits it. How are they handling it? Why do you think they're handling it in their different ways? All right, and 2, what does Sam and Eric claim happened to them after the feast? What are Ralph and Piggy's excuses? All right, so let's go over that. Sam and Eric came dragging a great log out of the forest. They dumped it by the fire and turned to the pool. Ralph jumped to his feet. Hi, you two. The twins checked a moment, then walked on. They're going to bathe, Ralph. Better get it over. The twins were very surprised to see Ralph. They flushed and looked past him into the air. Hello, fancy meeting you, Ralph. We'd just been in the forest to get wood for the fire. We got lost last night. Ralph examined his toes. You got lost after the... Piggy cleaned his lens. After the feast, said Sam, in a stifled voice. Eric nodded. Yes, after the feast. We left early, said Piggy quickly, because we were tired. So did we. Very early. We were very tired. Sam touched a scratch on his forehead and then hurriedly took his hands away. Eric fingered his split lip. Yeah, we were tired, repeated Sam. So we left early. Was it a good... The air was heavy with unspoken knowledge. Sam twisted, and the obscure word shot out of him. Dance? Memory of the dance that none of them had attended shook all four boys convulsively. We left early. Okay, so you can say what Sam and Eric claimed to have happened to them, and then what Ralph and Piggy's excuses were, and then Sam and Eric kind of took that excuse and said, yeah, us too. But also realized that when, was it Sam? Said, was it a good dance? You know, that's kind of admitting that he was there because they all claimed to leave before the dance. As it says in the book, memory of the dance that none of them had attended shook all four boys convulsively. So they're all denying that they were there, but they were. All right. The next question is, what kind of chief is Jack? Provide some specific examples to back up your claims. So this you can either write quotes or summarize whatever you decide to say, whether he's a good or a bad or whatever type of leader you're saying he is. When Roger came to the neck of the land that joined the castle rock to the mainland, he was not surprised to be challenged. He had reckoned, during the terrible night, on finding at least some of the tribe holding out against the horrors of the island in the safest place. The voice rang out sharply from on high, where the diminishing crags were balanced one on another. Halt! Who goes there? Roger. Advance, friend. Roger advanced. You could see who I was. The chief said we gotta challenge everyone. Roger peered up. You couldn't stop me coming if I wanted. Couldn't I? Climb up and see. Roger clambered up the ladder, like cliff. Look at this. A log had been jammed under the topmost rock and another level under that. Robert leaned lightly on the lever and the rock groaned. A full effort would send the rock thundering down at the neck of land. Roger admired. Okay, so they have to, whoever's guarding the opening to wherever they are, Castle Rock, has to challenge whoever comes in, and Roger says, well, you couldn't have stopped me. But then they point up and they see that above them, Robert is in charge of a lever. He's leaning on a lever they made of a log. So you have a huge rock and a log kind of wedged under it, and if he puts so much weight on it, it'll set the rock, the boulder, off the cliff, and it'll land on whoever is there. So it's set up to kill intruders. He's a proper chief, isn't he? Robert nodded. He's going to take us hunting. He jerked his head in the direction of the distant shelters, where a thread of white smoke climbed up the sky. Roger, sitting on the very edge of the cliff, looked somberly back at the island as he worked with his fingers at a loose tooth. His gaze settled on the top of the distant mountain, and Robert changed the unspoken subject. He's going to beat Wilfred. What for? Robert shook his head doubtfully. I don't know. He didn't say. He got angry and made us tie Wilfred up. He giggled excitedly. He's been tied up for hours, waiting. But didn't the chief say why? I never heard him. Sitting on the tremendous rock in the torrid sun, Roger received this news as an illumination. He ceased to work at his tooth and sat still, simulating the possibilities of irresponsible authority. Then, without another word, he climbed down the back of the rocks toward the cave and the rest of the tribe. The chief was sitting there, naked to the waist, his face blocked out in white and red. The tribe lay in a semicircle before him. The newly beaten and untied Wilfred was sniffling noisily in the background. Roger squatted with the rest. Tomorrow, went the chief, we shall hunt again. He pointed at this savage and that with his spear. Some of you will stay here to improve the cave and defend the gate. I shall take a few hunters with me and bring back meat. The defenders of the gate will see that the others don't sneak in. A savage raised his hand and the chief turned a bleak, painted face toward him. Why should they try to sneak in, Chief? The chief was vague but earnest. They will. They'll try to spoil things we do. So the watchers at the gate must be careful. And then the chief paused. They saw a triangle of startling pink dart out pass along his lips and vanish again. And then the beast might try to come in. You remember how he crawled. Okay, so they know what they did to Simon, but Simon was the one that crawled out of the forest. So they're all just pretending that it was the beast that crawled out of the forest. They do know what they did, though. These semicircles shuddered and muttered in agreement. He came, disguised. He may come again, even though we gave him the head of our kill to eat. So watch and be careful. Stanley lifted his forearm off the rock and held up an interrogative finger. Well, but didn't we... He squirmed and looked down. No. In the silence that followed, each savage flinched away from the individual memory. No. How could we kill it? So, another one of the kids, Stanley, is saying, well, didn't we kill it? Because, again, they all know that they killed Simon. But Jack says, no, we didn't kill the beast. So, again, it's them making excuses for killing Simon. Half relieved, half daunted by the implication of further terrors, the savages murmured again. So again, they're kind of accepting this story because it makes them feel less guilty. So leave the mountain alone, said the chief solemnly, and give it the head if you go hunting. Stanley flicked his finger again. I expect the beast disguised itself. Perhaps, said the chief. A theological speculation presented itself. We'd better keep on the right side of him, anyhow. You can't tell what he might do. The tribe considered this, and then were shaken, as if by a flow of wind. The chief saw the effect of his words, and stood abruptly. But tomorrow we'll hunt, and when we've got meat, we'll have a feast. Bill put up his hand. Chief. Yes. What'll we use for lighting the fire? The chief's blush was hidden by the white and red clay. Into his uncertain silence the tribe spilled their murmur once more. Then the chief held up his hand. We shall take fire from the others. Listen, tomorrow we'll hunt and get meat. Together I'll go along with 2 hunters. Tonight I'll go along with 2 hunters. Who will come? Maurice and Roger put up their hands. Maurice. Yes, chief? Where was their fire? Back at the old place by the fire rock. The chief nodded. The rest of you can go to sleep as soon as the sun sets. But us 3, Maurice, Roger, and me, we've got work to do. We'll leave just before sunset. Maurice put up his hand. But what happens if we meet? The chief waved his objection aside. We'll keep along by the sands. Then if he comes, we'll do our dance again. Only the 3 of us? Again, the murmur swelled and died away. All right. So then it flashes forward, or to the other side of the island, with Ralph and Peggy. So the next question is, at night, what does Ralph think of? And then, what does Peggy think will happen to them? How long have they been on the island? Piggy handed Ralph his glasses and waited to receive back his sight. The wood was damp, and this was the 3rd time they had lighted it. Ralph stood back, speaking to himself. We don't want another night without fire. He looked round guiltily at the 3 boys standing by. This was the first time he had admitted to the double function of the fire. Certainly one was to send up a beckoning column of smoke, but the other was to be a hearth now, and a comfort until they slept. Eric breathed on the wood till it glowed, and sent out a little flame. A billow of white and yellow smoke reeked up. Piggy took back his glasses, and looked at the smoke with pleasure. If only we could make a radio. Or a plane. Or a boat. Ralph drudged in his fading knowledge of the world. We might get taken prisoner by the Reds. So this is kind of them referring to what's going on back home. The Reds are communists. Remember, this is around World War II. And there was from, you know, pre-World War II till the Berlin Wall came down in the early 90s. Um, there was a humongous scare of communism spreading and taking over capitalism. America was capitalist in most of the European countries, but we were mostly afraid of Russia and their spread of communism. So we called them the Reds, the commies. Not, nice terms, but that's what they were called. So they're talking about, being taken prisoner by communists, probably by Russians. Although, China was communist. The Vietnam War was to stop spread communism. The Korean War, the Cold War is all about trying to stop the spread of communism. The Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis, all of these things that happened was to try and stop the Red Scare, the communist scare. All right, back to it. We might get taken prisoner by the Reds. Eric pushed back his hair. They'd be better then. He would not name people, and Sam finished the sentence for him by nodding along the beach. So they're pretty much saying being taken prisoner by the communists would be better than being by Jack or the Beast. Ralph remembered the ungainly figure on the parachute. He said something about a dead man. He flushed painfully at this admission that he had been present at the dance. He made urging motions at the smoke and with his body. Don't stop. Go on up. So now Ralph is kind of admitting he was there by saying he heard Simon saying something about a dead man. Smoke's getting thinner. We need more wood already, even when it's wet. My asthma. The response was mechanical. Sucks to your asthma. If I pull logs, I get my asthma bad. I wish I didn't. Ralph, but there it is. The three boys went into the forest and fetched armfuls of rotten wood. Once more the smoke rose yellow and thick. Let's get something to eat. Together they went in the fruit trees, carrying their spears, saying little, cramming in haste. When they came out of the forest again, the sun was setting and only embers glowing in the fire, and there was no smoke. I can't carry any more wood, said Eric. I'm tired. Ralph cleared his throat. We kept the fire going up there. Up there it was small, but this has got to be a big one. Ralph carried a fragment of the fire and watched the smoke that drifted into the dusk. We've got to keep it going. Eric flung himself down. I'm too tired, and what's the good? Eric, cried Ralph in a shocked voice. Don't talk like that. Sam knelt by Eric. Well, what is the good? Ralph tried indignantly to remember. There was something good about a fire, something overwhelmingly good. Ralph's told you often enough, said Piggy moodily. How else are we going to get rescued? Of course, if we don't make some smoke. He squatted before them in the crowding dusk. Don't you understand? What's the good of wishing for radios and boats? He held out his hand and twisted his fingers into a fist. There's only one thing we can do to get out of this mess. Anyone can play at hunting. Anyone can get us meat. He looked from face to face. Then, at the moment of greatest passion and conviction, the curtain flapped in his head, and he forgot what he had been driving at. He knelt there, his fist clenched, gazing solemnly from one to the other. Then the curtain whisked back. Oh, yes, so we've got to make smoke, and more smoke. But we can't keep it going. Look at that. The fire was dying on them. 2 to mind the fire, said Ralph, half to himself. That's 12 hours a day. We can't get any more wood, Ralph. Not in the dark. Not at night. We can't light it every morning, said Piggy. Nobody ain't going to see smoke in the dark. Or we can light it every morning, said Piggy. Nobody ain't going to see smoke in the dark. Sam nodded vigorously. It was different when the fire was up there. Ralph stood up, feeling curiously defenseless with the darkness pressing in. Let the fire go out, then, for tonight. He led the way to the first shelter, which still stood, though battered. The bed leaves lay within, dry and noisy to the touch. In the next shelter, little one was talking in his sleep. The four big uns crept into the shelter and burrowed under the leaves. The twins lay together, and Ralph and Piggy at the other end. For a while there was a continual creak and rustle of leaves as they tried for comfort. Piggy? Yeah? All right? Suppose so. At length, save for an occasional rustle, the shelter was silent. An oblong of blackness relieved with the brilliant spangles hung before them, and there was the hollow sound of surf on the reef. Ralph settled himself in for a nightly game of supposing. Supposing they could be transported home by jet, then before morning they would land at the big airfield in Wilshire. They would go by car. No, for things to be perfect, they would go by train, all the way down to Devon, and take their cottage again. Then, at the foot of the garden, the wild ponies would come and look over the wall. Ralph turned restlessly in the leaves. Dartmoor was wild, and so were the ponies, but the attraction of wildness had gone. His mind skated to a consideration of a tamed town where savagery could not set foot. What could be safer than the bus centre with its lamps and wheels? All at once Ralph was dancing round a lamp strand. There was a bus crawling out of the bus station. A strange bus. Ralph! Ralph! What is it? Don't make that noise like that. Sorry. From the darkness of the furthest end of the shelter came a dreadful moaning, and they shattered their leaves in their fear. Sam and Eric locked in an embrace, were fighting each other. Sam! Sam! Hey, Eric. Presently all was quiet again. Piggy spoke softly to Ralph. We got to get out of this. What do you mean? Get rescued. For the first time that day, and despite the crowding blackness, Ralph sniggered. I mean it, whispered Piggy. If we don't get home soon, we'll be barmy. Round the bend. Bomb happy. Crackers. All just means kind of going crazy. Ralph pushed the damp tendrils of his hair out of his eyes. You write a letter to your auntie. Piggy considered this solemnly. I don't know where she is now, and I haven't got an envelope and a stamp, and there isn't a mailbox or a postman. So he kind of didn't get the joke there, the sarcasm. The success of his tiny joke overcame Ralph. His sniggers became uncontrollable. His body jumped and twitched. Piggy rebuked him with dignity. I haven't said anything all that funny. Ralph continued to snigger through though his chest hurt. His twitchings exhausted him till he lay, breathless and woebegone, waiting for the next spasm. During one of these pauses, he was ambushed by sleep. Ralph, you've been making that noise again. Do be quiet, Ralph, because Ralph heaved over among the leaves. He had a reason to be thankful that his dream was broken, for the bus had been nearer and more distinct. Why? Because. Be quiet and listen. Ralph lay down carefully to the accompaniment of a long sigh from the leaves. Eric moaned something and then lay still. The darkness, save for the useless oblong of stars, was a blanket thick. I can't hear anything. There's something moving outside. And so the next question is, when they hear noises outside the shelter, what do they think? And how are they wrong? And how are they right? Ralph's head prickled. The sound of his blood drowned all else and then subsided. I still can't hear anything. Listen for a long time. Quite clearly and empathetically, and only a yard or so away from the back of the shelter, a stick cracked. The blood roared again in Ralph's ears. Confused images chased each other through his mind. A composite of these things was prowling around the shelters. He could feel Piggy's head against his shoulder and the convulsive grip of a hand. Ralph, shut up and listen. Desperately, Ralph prayed that the beast would prefer little ones. Okay, so they think it's the beast. How are they wrong? I mean, is there really a beast? And who is it really? Who decided they were going to come down and get the fire? And how is it kind of right in a way? And then what happens to the shelter? How does Ralph do for himself? And what is gone? A voice whispered horribly outside, Piggy, Piggy. It's come, gasped Piggy. It's real. He clung to Ralph and reached to get his breath. Piggy, come outside. I want you, Piggy. Ralph's mouth was against Piggy's ear. Don't say anything. Piggy, where are you, Piggy? Something brushed against the back of the shelter. Piggy kept still for a moment. Then he had his asthma. He arched his back and crashed among the leaves with his legs. Ralph rolled away from him. Then there was a vicious snarling in the mouth of the shelter and the plunge and thump of living things. Someone tripped over Ralph in Piggy's corner, and Piggy's corner became a compilation of snarls and crashes and flying limbs. Ralph hit out. Then he and what seemed like a dozen others were rolling over and over, hitting, biting, scratching. He was torn and jolted, found fingers in his mouth and bit them. A fist withdrew and came back like a piston, so that the whole shelter exploded into light. Ralph twisted sideways on top of a writhing body that felt hot breath on his cheek. He began to pound the mouth below him, using his clenched fist as a hammer. He hit with more and more passionate hysteria as the face became slippery. A knee jerked up between his legs, and he fell sideways, busying himself with his pain, and the fight rolled over him. Then the shelter collapsed, with smothering finality, and the anonymous shapes fought their way out and through. Dark figures drew themselves out of the wreckage and lifted away, till the screams of the little ones and Piggy's gasps were once more audible. Ralph called out in a quavering voice, All you little ones, go to sleep. We've had a fight with the others. Now go to sleep. Sam and Eric came close and peered at Ralph. Are you two all right? I think so. I got busted. So did I. How's Piggy? They hauled Piggy clear of the wreckage and leaned him against a tree. The night was cool and purged of immediate terror. Piggy's breathing was a little easier. Did you get hurt, Piggy? Not much. That was Jack and his hunters, said Ralph bitterly. Why can't they leave us alone? We've got them something to think about. We gave them something to think about, said Sam. Honesty compelled him to go on. At least you did. I got mixed up with myself in a corner. I gave one of 'em what for, said Ralph. I smashed him up all right. He won't want to come and fight us again in a hurry. So did I, said Eric. When I woke up, one was kicking me in the face. I got an awful bloody face, I think, Ralph, but what I did him in the end. What did you do? I got my knee up, said Eric, with simple pride, and I hit him with it in the pills. You should have heard him holler. He won't come back in a hurry either. So we didn't do too badly. So what actually happened was when they were fighting, it was pitch black. Ralph ended up hitting Eric, and Eric was the one that needed him. So they're fighting each other. But it was Ralph and his Jack and his hunters that came. All right. So we're about to find out, how does Ralph do for himself? Well, he ends up accidentally fighting Eric. And then what is gone? What is the literal importance of that? Figuratively, what has happened? How else could Roger and Jack have gotten fire? And then 8, you could actually already answer. Who did Ralph hit? He ended up hitting Eric. And why is this ironic? Why is it ironic then that meaning, something that happens that you don't expect to happen, or the opposite of what you expect to happen? Why is it ironic that Ralph beat up Eric? All right, so Ralph moved suddenly in the dark, but then he heard Eric working his mouth. What's the matter? Just a tooth loose? Piggy drew up his legs. You all right, Piggy? I thought they wanted the conch. Ralph trotted down the pale beach and jumped on the platform. The conch still glimmered by the chief's seat. He gazed for a moment or two, then went back to Piggy. They didn't take the conch. I know, they didn't come for the conch. They came for something else. Ralph, what am I going to do? Far off along the bow stave of beach, 3 figures trotted toward the castle rock. They kept away from the forest and down by the water. Occasionally they sang softly. Occasionally they turned cartwheels down by the moving streak of phosphorescence. The chief led them, trotting steadily, exulting in his achievement. He was a chief now, in truth, and he made stabbing motions with his spear. From his left hand dangled Piggy's broken glasses. All right. So, what's gone? Well, Piggy's glasses. So what's the real importance of that? Well, what have they been using the glasses for? So literally, how is this going to affect them? Plus, Piggy, can't see without them. And figuratively, what has happened? So literally, the glasses have been taken away, but what has been taken away that you can't um, what chances have been taken away from them? Because the glasses create what? So the chance of what has been taken away from them. If that's really confusing for you, please email me or text me and I can help you out with that one. And how else could Roger and Jack have gotten the fire? What could they have easily gone down there and done and gotten the fire without stealing Piggy's glasses? What would have been the more mature and human way to do that, humane way? All right. We are down to the last 2 chapters. I do not know if I will be able to get those up, how fast I'll be able to get them up. I have to do some recording for the 11th graders, but I'm going to try and get those last 2 chapters up this weekend so they're all ready to go by Sunday or Monday. I need you guys to stay on time with this because your last work packet is coming up and you're going to need to have read the whole book in order to do it. We're not going to do the test, but we will be doing stuff that involves the entire book. Especially you need to know the symbols. Who does what represent? The difference between savagery and civilization. What does the face paint represent? What is the conch, the fire, the glasses? Piggy, scientific mind. Ralph, leader. You need to know all these things. So if you have questions or if you're behind, this weekend is when you need to catch up because we got 2. Next week we got the last 2 chapters and then we're moving on and that'll be the end. There'll be no, I know you probably got the email and messenger from Mr. Parche talking about the deadlines for all this work. We got one too. If it's not turned in by that deadline, it's an automatic fail. You can't afford that. We may not be walking the graduation stage as we normally do right away, but there'll still be a graduation, whether, I don't know how yet, but there'll still be a diploma or not a diploma. And so make sure that these questions get done. I saw a lot of half-done questions of the last packet, which is just not acceptable, guys. I've been going through these. So do the best that you can. I know it's a struggle, but I am here to help you. We are almost done. And then still need you to be sending me stuff for the slideshow. So I hope you're doing well. And I will be back in a few days with the last 2 chapters. See you soon.